So, the York reveal. I liked it quite... How much... So there's 2 videos I'm juggling for Tuesday. I've already written the draft for the one that I think is going to be the Tuesday video. But I do also want to do one that's talking about... I think maybe I'll wait for the next chapter, because the next chapter will probably give us some more details on York, which I think will give us details like thematically what to think and everything like that. But I think that everybody's picked up to some degree on how York being the traitor makes sense thematically, right? It all just kind of clicks thematically with everything Egghead Island has already been about, the ideas that have been phrased repeatedly, right? As for, do I think it was a good reveal? Like, do I think it was a good... you could put it into 2 categories. In general, in terms of classic, what makes a good whodunit mystery, technically this wasn't done like that, right? But Oda's not a whodunit, like, he's not Agatha Christie, right? This isn't his forte. Oda's really good at other mystery. I think Oda's phenomenal at writing certain, like, long-term mysteries throughout One Piece. We all know that, right? I think he makes those things connect phenomenally well throughout One Piece, right? We know that, right? Stuff like Kanjuro and York, these are really his first times writing into the story a whodunit style mystery, right? Where he's saying, hey, there's a bad guy, try and guess who the bad guy is. That's different from his usual style of mystery storytelling. I think Oda is a phenomenal mystery writer in general, and One Piece's mysteries in general, I think one of the things that are one of the biggest draws that keep people coming back, because they're so well thought out, so well planned over time, and they're usually, like 95% of the time, really exciting and mind-blowing, okay? That aside, let's talk about the Kanjuro York type thing, which is the new style of mystery storytelling, which is Oda likes doing this whodunit type thing. That's new, right? People might be saying Water 7 was the first time, but people would be wrong, all right? These 2, York and Kanjuro, are not similar to the Water 7 stuff. The Water 7 situation was never framed as a whodunit style storyline, okay? We got the reveals out of the blue that, like, when we had these masked figures and stuff running rampant and attacking people and stuff like that, right? We'd already had the name CP9 and stuff like dropped. We could tell that these masked guys were bad guys and things like that. But Oda was never playing up a sense of, wait, who are these masked guys? There are people in the island that were secretly masked figures this entire time that were working for the world government or something like that, right? He never established a sort of, like, figure out who's under the mask. That was never a thing, right? It was the surprise was purely out of the blue that it turns out that these are guys that we already know. There was never anything planted in the story for us to that Oda was suggesting to us that, hey, you should be trying to figure out who these masked characters are. Totally different from the Kanjuro situation, the York situation, where Oda planted a mystery where he's like, hey, there is a traitor. He has characters talk repeatedly about there being a traitor. He has characters repeatedly saying we need to figure out who's betraying us and everything like that. Somebody on our side is selling out information. That's planted, and now the readers are trying to figure out who that person is. York, same thing. There's somebody on the island. Who's doing this stuff on the island? We need to track down whoever this person is, right? That's very, very different. So Water 7, I think people shouldn't even bring that shit up because it's not the same thing. I know I brought it up as a comparative mystery situation, but it was more so just a mysterious plot line rather than comparing it one-to-one as... I'm talking about in the last video I did. Yeah, I did say Water 7 was also a mystery plotline. It was a mysterious plotline, but it was never a whodunit mystery, right? So I'm talking specifically in terms of whodunit mysteries, right? In terms of whodunit mysteries, we've only had 2 in One Piece so far. The only 2 were Kanjuro and York, okay? So, when you're talking about a whodunit mystery, generally speaking, the really, really good whodunit mysteries, the ones that are generally acclaimed, considered very good, are when the person is both someone very surprising, but also someone that makes really a lot of sense when you can track back their statements, actions, their statements, actions, and behavior throughout everything you saw of them, and suddenly everything clicks. You want a click sort of a feeling where it's like, oh, they did this, and they said this, and they were acting in this sort of way. And all of that, all of these odd little things suddenly make sense once you get that reveal, right? I would argue that Kanjuro was close to that. Kanjuro was kind of that, because Kanjuro was the situation where we saw so many of his actions that a lot of people said didn't make sense, like his left hand, right hand situation. Why was he sending these birds away? There's lots of little things about Kanjuro that people were already calling out, which was like, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that, right? And then it suddenly clicked. With York, it's not the same, because with York, there's nothing about her actions, statements, behavior. There's no oddities, right? A good mystery is when the author sets it up such that, wait, something's not adding up about this character, but it only makes sense when the reveal happens and suddenly everything clicks into place. That's what the legendary mystery storylines are kind of considered to be. When everything just clicks based on what the character has been shown to be doing, and certain things are just a little bit off, but you only realize why they're off and how off they were once you get that final piece of reveal. York is not the same because Oda essentially had her do nothing throughout the arc. However, right, at the same time, I think York is a more interesting reveal than Kanjuro, right? I would say by the standards of like a normal whodunit and what most would consider to be a good whodunit mystery storytelling template, the York reveal is kind of whatever, right? It's just, you're not really writing anything into the story to set this up to be a oh, it suddenly clicks reveal, right? When people are bringing up, well, she's her thing that she represents is desire and the arc's theme is desire, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing, right? Like, it means thematically it fits, but you're not actually writing the mystery to set up any sort of click reveal, basically, with how this character is being written over the course of the story, right? There's nothing about the way York was written up till now that makes this a really good reveal. But conceptually, the idea that Vegapunk's satellite that represents desire and has his deepest desires is ultimately the one that was betraying them, that is really good. So ultimately, it's like, as a whodunit mystery, right, which I keep saying, no, it's not as good as Kanjuro, right? But it's way more interesting to me than Kanjuro. Reason being, with Kanjuro, I always felt like it just, you could have swapped Kanjuro for plenty of other scabbards and I wouldn't have really cared, because it doesn't really mean anything and it almost doesn't really impact the plot in any different way. If Raizo was revealed to be, oh, I'm actually Kurozumi Raizo this entire time, I'd have been like, all right, cool. What does that do for me, right? It's just, okay, it's you, right? Like, if Oda just changed things a little bit and been like, okay, Raizo does the slightly more suspicious stuff, it's like the characters among the scabbards, it doesn't really matter to me too much which one it is at the end of the day, right? With York, there's a lot of meaning attached to it being the desire body, right? Because now we can get into some really, really interesting thematic ideas, right? And it says so much more about Vegapunk and the type of person Vegapunk is and the thematic hints that we've been getting so far, right? So in that sense, I think that the York reveal is probably the best one that it could have been, I think, in out of all of the Vegapunk bodies that I can think of. The reason that I think I and many crossed off York, though, that still hasn't been addressed, which is just like, how was she taking out the cameras? Because she was actively walking around with the rest of the Straw Hats at the same time that was happening. And how was she keeping her knowledge from being synced with Punk Records? So those are the two kind of big things. So I'm sure some people saw it coming, but I think it's very difficult to see coming because we saw her. She had an alibi, right? She's walking with the Straw Hats at the same time as the cameras are being taken out. So it kind of doesn't make any sense. In that sense, she was in the right building. She was in building C, which is what Shaka was talking about when the cameras were being taken out. But there was no clue in that. Like, you would naturally cross her off because it just doesn't add up. But I'm sure that there's a good explanation for that. Maybe she told one of the Seraphim to take out the camera or something, as she's clearly been giving the Seraphim orders behind the scenes. So I think it would still make sense.